Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode.
Hello, everyone. And for this week's episode, Rachel and myself joined friend Chris Newman on his Impact Meets Innovation podcast, where he interviewed Rachel and I on all things Oneness Consciousness, Masters of Self University, healing, and what it means to be a mystic. So please enjoy the rest of the show, and thanks for listening.
Hi, welcome to episode 7 of Impact Meets Innovation podcast. Today's guest, I have the pleasure of introducing two amazing individuals. First, we have Rachel Fiori, the CEO of Masters of Self University, the #1 international best-selling author with her book, Mason's Way. And next, we have Danny Morley, a mystical life coach at MSU. And I'm Chris Newman, your host, a former student of MSU, a believer of this work and what it does for the true essence of us as human beings. Rachel, Danny, thanks for jumping on. I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you so much, Chris. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Rachel, as a gifted coach that leads people through a healing journey with Oneness Consciousness, which gives people a no-nonsense plan, right, to actually heal and transform. Can you share in your own words what Oneness Consciousness means and the ways of oneness on the deepest level possible?
Yeah, I love this. Let's jump in. So, oneness consciousness, we have to first, I'm going to mention this and we'll explain it more later, that we have all been conditioned to live our lives, our belief systems, the way we show up in our relationships from separation consciousness. Okay, we'll learn more about that a little bit later. Oneness consciousness is that which has no opposites. Okay, so there's no extreme polarization. There's no extreme duality where, people are always opposing each other. Oneness consciousness is the highest level of enlightenment that human beings can achieve. And before anybody says, oh, enlightenment, I don't want to be enlightened. Who wants that? Do you want to be healed? Do you want to be whole? Do you want to be a powerful, sovereign being that does not emotionally, psychologically, mentally suffer anymore? And if you answered yes to any of those, that's enlightenment, my friends. So the highest level that we can achieve in that platform of enlightenment, not that there's a ceiling to it, but the highest levels human beings can actually achieve are accomplished through oneness consciousness and the 20 universal ways of oneness. It's becoming a more elevated being so that we can create a more elevated, loving, peaceful world. But we have to become that first ourselves. That is the gist of what oneness consciousness is.
Yeah, I love that. I really do. Danny, I want you to piggyback off that a little bit. What does healing and transformation actually mean?
Wow. I mean, that's a big question. And I'll start with, I'll share a little bit of what it means to me, because I started with going down the road of breath work, of meditation, of going to Peru. I did the ayahuasca retreats. I did all of that, and it all helped just a little bit. It definitely helped, but it wasn't addressing the root cause of why I was in suffering or pain, or I was experiencing a lot of depression, a lot of mental health issues, and a lot of anxiety. And all these things, these tools that I were using, they were helping. They for sure were helping, but they weren't really healing. They weren't actually getting to the root. And that's what, through the work that I've learned from Rachel, when I found her, that's what she really taught me, was how to get down from starting at the surface. Okay, I'm experiencing depression, I'm experiencing anxiety, but why?
Yeah.
Why am I actually experiencing this? And learning what she taught me, learning how to understand my conditioning, my programs, the way that I show up in the world. Learning how to get deeper and finding out what is the energy that's causing this behavior, what is the energy that's causing this feeling that I'm having. And when I can tap into my heart, which is what Rachel guides people through, is how to connect to the heart and then bring that love that you are to that pain. That's what creates actual transformation and healing. It happens at the root level, at the energetic level. And everything that I tried in the past, it was just like
Surface
temporary
level.
cleaning. Yeah, it's like cleaning,
Yeah.
but not addressing. It's like opening the windows, but not addressing anything else that's in the house. It's like, okay, well, yeah, a little bit of fresh air helps, but the pile of shit that's in the corner, that's the thing that's sinking up the house. So let me go and clean that up. And once I clean that up, then we can really start to create some transformation.
Yeah. Okay. So, Rachel, the root level, right? Not the surface level, the root level. Danny mentioned programs, and being someone that's gone through this before, I understand. But for someone that's just listening, when he says programs, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's the way we've been conditioned. And that means we have mental programs that we run, emotional programs that we run, behavioral programs that we run, and the majority of them stem from our inner child wounds or our core wounds that can come from trauma or something, very negative that happened to us. So our mental programs are, when you do that thing over there that I don't like, or that hurts my feelings, or that offends me, what programs am I running? Right? We start with our triggers. Well, I'm triggered by you right now. And that means let's start to go deeper. What are my mental programs? That means, what's my mind saying about you? Probably, you're an asshole, you're a jerk, you're being this way and that way, and that's why I'm angry. Oh, I'm angry, I'm frustrated. Those are my emotional programs. And then how am I showing up? Am I acting offended? Am I making a face? Did I change my tone of voice? Those are behaviors. We go all the way down, deeper, 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 until we get to the core wound. Why am I actually triggered by you? No more do we live in separation consciousness because you're showing up like a jerk. You could be showing up like a jerk. It doesn't mean I need to be triggered by you. If I'm actually triggered by you showing up as a jerk, what does that say about me? It means
Right.
I am unhealed. I lack power. I'm not in my power. If you're really showing up as a jerk and I've healed all of my programming, all of my energetic programming that caused me to think, feel, and behave the way that I think, feel, and behave, which is all conditioning. If I
Yeah.
heal and alchemize all of that and you show up as a jerk, I can see that you're showing up as a jerk. I don't have to have judgment. I might need to set a very powerful boundary, but it comes from no judgment. It comes from the way of unconditional love. And it might be a really strong boundary I need to set. I might even need to raise my voice and get louder at you to be safer, whatever the scenario. But it's coming from my divinity. It isn't coming from a reaction or the way I've been preconditioned to show up in weakness or powerlessness just because you're showing up as a jerk.
Danny, as a mystical coach, okay, where do you feel when people come in and are students of yours, what do you think is the hardest thing for them to, I guess, develop or understand right out the gate when they go through this journey? And even you, as someone that did it yourself, like what's the first roadblock you see often with people?
It's the age-old saying, the longest trip you'll ever take is going from your mind to your heart. And that's exactly what this work is. It's learning how to get out of your mind, because all of those programs, they all exist within your mind. So we're programmed at a young age to think and feel in a certain way. And so when we stay trapped in that programming, and this is literally everything that we teach, is how to see that program. And then, as Rachel said, connect back to your divinity. And when we do that, that's when the healing and the transformation starts to happen. So the biggest hurdle at the beginning is the biggest hurdle that I'm still working through now. It's the biggest hurdle. It's learning how to get out of your mind and stop acting out of your programs. Because when we're acting from our programs, that's when we're disconnected from our divinity. We're acting probably some level of coming from woundedness or powerlessness or insecurity or smallness, or we're acting out of shame. We might not realize it. We might not realize what energy we're actually coming from. And that's part of the work that we offer, is being able to see, okay, well, as I mentioned this earlier, like, here's the surface level. This is how I'm showing up. But what is actually being activated that's causing me to behave like this? So the biggest hurdle is always, how do I get out of my head? And that's learning how to base your awareness in your heart center and live from this place and be a heart-centered being. Because in our heart, this is where the transformation occurs. This is where all the healing occurs. And this is where our divinity is. Why wouldn't we want to connect to that? Why wouldn't we want to connect to a place that's loving, that's powerful, that's harmless, that's gentle, that's joyous? Like, that's where the peaceful states occur. That's where we find the freedom. And so it's always, how do I learn to get out of the craziness of my mind and live from my heart?
And just to add to that, that is an energetic process, right? People can't think their way into their heart. And why do we focus on our heart? So to add to your question, Chris, what seems to be the biggest hurdle for most people at first, when they first start this work that we offer at Masters of Self University, it's the biggest hurdle is that, as Danny said, the energetic process of connecting to their heart. But why is that such a challenge? Number one, because of our conditioning. We're conditioned to stay trapped in our minds, number one. But number two is that we've also been conditioned to believe following your heart and being led by your heart means that you're following all of your emotions all the time. And I can't trust my emotions. It's like, that's not what you're following. You're not following emotions. Emotions are energetic processes. They are energetic programs. That is not your soul coming through.
Yeah.
Right. So our emotions are human aspect, but we're not following our emotions. Jesus Christ, don't anybody do that. We don't want you to do that. There's a difference. We say follow your heart. We're talking about your heart chakra, your energy center. That is literally the energetic connection to your soul. That's the energetic connection to your highest self. So one of the foundations that we teach in our coaching and the work that we offer is to energetically connect to the center of the center of the center of your heart chakra. And because of that, you're able to energetically connect to your soul. When you have that divine connection on an energetic level, that's what starts the transformation, the healing, the alchemy, the way of wisdom. That's when we can connect to our heart. We elevate higher to what I teach, which is the 20 universal ways of oneness. That is the way of connection. Everybody's looking for connection out there. Oh my God, stop it. We're connecting from our wounding, our trauma. We're connecting from programs and mental, like, stop. We should never connect to another being on this planet from anything less than divinity. Instead, through this work, we learn how to energetically connect to our divinity, heal, elevate, heal, raise our level of consciousness, heal some more, become whole. And when we are free from our suffering, that's the place that you should be connecting to other human beings from, no matter what the scenario, no matter what the situation.
And that's
the way of connection.
That's the highest form of enlightenment, right?
That's the highest form of enlightenment.
Like, I remember when I first started this journey working with Danny, I wanted to get to that place.
Yeah.
But I was running all these programs that were stemming from, like, how I'm thinking about an emotion.
Yeah.
And so when even if I had positive thoughts, I was thinking of, like, oh, this made me happy, this made me whatever. And when I try to, like, work through it, they didn't mesh. It didn't go, it didn't work. And I would feel actually better. Like Danny said, some of this other stuff, the breath work and things like that, it does help, right? But you get to a place where you're like, maybe I shouldn't be mad at that, right? That was how I was thinking.
Yeah.
And then after a while, I was like, well, why am I mad at this? And then you go to your inner child work. And that's, for me, that was the easier part, because when you really, for me, I use my mind to think of when that started, but then I felt it, right? And that's where it was like a progression for me. You talk about the inner child stuff, and there's a lot out there on inner child healing and things like that. And then we talk about this process of becoming an enlightened, human being. Do you think there's an appropriate age to begin this journey? Or do you think there's a certain individual that is ready for this journey? Now, obviously, you want to, you have to want it, I guess I'm trying to say. But like, do you believe that from a physical standpoint, there's a certain age that someone is ready for something potentially for this?
It depends, because on one hand, how unhealed are you? And where the old world that I call it, that we've grown up in, the older you are, the more unhealed you likely are, depending on when you've started doing work like this, right? So the age doesn't matter. It's more a question of what level of consciousness am I at and how much healing needs to happen. That is, the unhealed stuff, the programming that I have, those are the only things that block you from your divinity. So it's not a matter of the age means nothing. It doesn't matter. Yes, you said something very important. You have to want to elevate. You have to want to become more powerful. You have to want to be healed, of course. But at any age, you start with, what are my programs? How unhealed am I? Do I have unhealed trauma or whatever, unhealed inner child wounds inside? If I do, you need to heal that first. And it can happen simultaneously with elevating into the ways of oneness and becoming a being of oneness consciousness. But that unhealed stuff, that is the only thing blocking any human being from elevating to the highest levels. The second thing is, you can be fully healed and whole, which any person can be. Any person can become fully healed and whole. You absolutely can. You just have to be willing to do the work to get there. But what then? It doesn't mean you're at a high level of consciousness. It doesn't mean you're an enlightened being because you're healed and you have no more trauma. You elevate when you heal yourself, of course. However, do you live as the way of responsibility, as the way of patience, as the way of surrender, as the way of truth, connection, compassion, harmlessness and gentleness, unconditional love, etc.? Do you actually function at those vibrational frequencies? Now we're understanding a more elevated definition of what it really means to be enlightened. So I'm fully healed, I'm fully whole, which gets you on that path of enlightenment. I mentioned that earlier. However, are you elevated enough to actually live? Every thought that you think, every emotion that you feel, are those stemming from a divine place of purity, of harmony, right? And that's where we start to then refine and elevate so much higher than a person could ever imagine they could actually live their everyday lives as an enlightened being, versus this spiritual nonsensical bullcrap that's put out, like you have to wear a certain type of clothes and sit on a mountain for 30 years in order to be enlightened. That's ridiculous. Like, you're here to enjoy living as a human being on this planet, and you can do so as an enlightened being. It just means a being who's willing to not cause harm to anyone or anything on this planet while they're here enjoying being a human. That's really a higher definition of it.
So, Rachel, talk to me a little bit about your path, right? Like, you're where you are now. You have a wonderful company that provides so much for so many people. You serve as really a subject matter expert in a lot of ways. How did this journey start for you? Like, where did this begin? You know, I think I always am interested to hear of, like, the beginning, right? The goodies, the good stuff. You know, can you share some of that for me?
Sure. Do we have like 9 hours? It's going to take a little while, but I'll summarize it, I promise. Let me say this, that first it started with, literally as a child, as a baby, as a toddler, growing up at very young ages, looking at the adults around me and saying, why don't you get this? This isn't how we're supposed to be. Like, there's a better way. There's a more loving way. And I just always knew there was a more loving way. I had a stepfather. My father died 1 week after my 5th birthday. And the stepfather that came in to my life was extremely abusive, mentally ill, but a physician, So as a man and as a physician, you're just kind of automatically respected, and you assume that if anything's wrong, it's everybody else's fault. So I was never going to get help or support through any of the abuse that I grew up with. And at 13 years old, I had a massive shift when I had gotten a B on my report card instead of straight A's, the previous report card period. And I worked really hard to bring that up, because a B, you never know what's going to come other than abuse, right? And how long you're going to be grounded. And when I got the grade back up to an A, I was learning the programming of, I have to make someone else happy. How they behave is dependent on how I show up, and that kind of thing. And when I handed him my report card and I looked at him and was waiting for, like, oh my God, good job, you did it. Good job bringing that grade back up. I saw the face of where I knew the abuse was going to come. And I literally had an out-of-body experience in that moment. The abuse started screaming, "You're stupid. This isn't a fucking A. It's too low to be. It doesn't count as an A." And the cursing and the abuse and and I just watched for a few seconds behind, like I was up and behind both of us watching this. My soul just left my body, and I had this massive epiphany. This isn't personal. This has nothing to do with you. And then there was a harder lesson of divine truth, which is, why do you take his abuse so personally? Like, knock it off, like, you know better than this. And then, boom, I was back in my body, and I just smiled. I was like, this isn't about me. This isn't about my A or a B. This is your mental programming. This is your trauma that you are dumping onto me. And that changed everything. And how I never didn't give a shit what grade I got. I got that grade for me. And it was never again for another human being that I did anything. I don't need validation from any person on this planet. That's codependency. That's weakness. That's powerlessness. I show up in the way that I show up first for me, because if I focus on my divinity and my level of enlightenment, that is the gift that ripples out to other people. So that's really what launched me onto the rest of my life path and led me to here today.
Wow, that's I don't know what to say to that. That's just something I've never experienced. But that's a really, I guess, cool story. I guess we can use the word cool for a moment, but it's unique. Danny, but when we planned on doing this podcast, I remember a conversation you and I had like 6 months ago about boundaries. And Rachel, you referenced that a little bit ago, and it's a big part of what you guys do at MSU and teaching people to create boundaries, both for people around them and themselves, right? Danny, talk to me about the importance. Well, first off, Danny, break down what setting a boundary is, okay? And I know it can come in many different forms, but start there and then we'll get into it.
Well, the most important thing when we're talking about boundaries is, what energy are we setting the boundary from? Because if we're setting a boundary from a place of powerlessness, from a place of just pain, and even that's nuanced, you know, if we're in pain and that's why we're setting the boundary, like, hey, I need some space right now, leave me alone. But if it's coming from our programming and we're setting a boundary, let's just say with a friend, and then we're not doing it truly from our heart, from love, and we're doing it for some other reason, then we're more likely to just break that boundary, or that boundary might mean not what it's supposed to mean because it's not coming from your heart. So the most important thing is always, is this boundary coming from a place of power? Is it coming from a loving place? Am I first, as Rachel said, am I loving myself? Is that why I'm creating this? Is this to kind of create some space that I need to work through healing? This is something that I've been working on all year, is creating healthy boundaries. And it's really important for highly sensitive people like myself. There's 20% of the population out there. This is a lot what Rachel teaches about. It's are highly sensitive. The way that we process energy through our nervous system is just deeper. And it's really important for us to master boundary setting. And that goes for absolutely anyone, but it's especially important for highly sensitive people.
I'll jump in there because I want to add that setting boundaries, you are not coming from a divine place with your boundary if, number one, it's a suggestion and not a boundary. That's the biggest mistake people make. I suggest to you, I don't like the way you're talking to me. Excuse me, I'm going to call a timeout. The way that you are yelling or screaming right now, not okay. And if you continue, I'm done with the conversation, and you walk out if they continue. That's a boundary. Just, I don't like, can you talk to me in a more, that's not a boundary. That's a question, or that's a suggestion. The second thing is, when you set boundaries, Danny mentioned they have to come from a place of power. You're not in your power if you're judging the other person. When you are in judgment, you are then running a superiority program, making them inferior to you. They may be showing up in an unhealthy, unloving way. Yeah, that's truth. That's the way of truth, one of the 20 ways of oneness. However, it is also the way of truth to self-reflect and say, I'm judging you right now as a piece of garbage because of the way you're showing up with me. And if I am in judgment, it is best to sit down, shut up, and do your own healing. Setting a boundary from a place of judgment isn't setting a boundary. It's creating the role of superiority, which means energetically you're creating inequality instead of the way of equality. That's the kind of work, how deep we go with realizing how we are actually showing up in the world.
Yeah, actually, that was beautifully said, because I had the same realization when you said that, the inequality versus equality aspect. And I think of the easiest form of this to think about is like when you're in an argument, let's just say with like a significant other, right?
Mhm.
And they're yelling, and you don't know how to respond, and you just know that you need to get out of this situation.
Mhm.
But by setting a healthy boundary, you're saying, listen, I this is not the way to talk to me. I will not move forward in this conversation unless we change how things are playing out, right? But if I'm saying that because like I think what you're saying is not important or not relevant,
Yes.
or is against my opinion, right?
Yes.
That is the superiority aspect.
Yes.
You know?
And that's the dysfunctional programs that we run.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And what's interesting is this is the first time I've heard you say this. And what I'm thinking right now is every one of our programs is related to that principle, I feel. Right? Like,
That it's related. This is beautiful. It is related to separation consciousness, as I mentioned when
yes,
we
yes,
opened. I
yes,
am making you separate from me. You're this. I'm that.
yes,
You're wrong, and
yes,
I'm the one who's right. That's separation consciousness. What results from separation consciousness is us opposing each other instead of being in union and working through something in a loving, divine way.
yeah,
Separation consciousness always creates superiority or inferiority in equality instead of the way of equality.
yes, 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 yes.
So we
I
cannot elevate as beings in our relationships or in the world or in our organizations or in our government. We in micro and macro level, if we continue to create things from separation consciousness. Separation consciousness means we always have to have a polarized opposite. There always has to be opposition. Democrat, Republican, all of that's ridiculous. Knock it off. We don't need any of it.
yeah, yeah. It's funny how, we've talked many times, but sometimes you just hear something a different way and it clicks.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about MSU for a moment, right? Let's get into the goods. So I was a student of MSU. I learned an amazing deal. I think it changed my life. I know it changed my life, actually. Since that moment, since I started working with Danny and you, my life is better. And but what I want to talk about real quick is, Rachel, when you were crafting MSU, you, what you're describing is a very deep journey. Okay,
Mhm.
it's not something that you can't just put a business model together with something so in depth, right?
Right.
So for you, if someone was like interested in leveling up and wants to actually heal and wants to deal with their traumas and identify with their inner child work and go down that road, what is the path for them, right, in the MSU world? Like, what's the path?
So we always start people with what it energetically means to identify your programs and your core wound, anything and everything that is left inside of you that might be unhealed or that
Mm-hmm.
might lack divinity. So there's a acute level of self-awareness. We give you really deep and elevated teachings, but we meet you where you're at, if that makes
Okay.
sense. Like we
Okay.
assess where you're at, where you're functioning at, where's your level of consciousness, where's your level of healing that you've achieved already, maybe. And we build on that from there. We connect you to the power within. That's an energetic process. How do I connect to my heart chakra? Literally, my soul, the energy of my soul. I want people to learn how to be guided by their own souls and not rely on other people outside. Like, I don't want anybody to be codependent anymore. That's how
Mm-hmm.
you set yourself up for brainwashing and conditioning to begin with. So, we are alleviating that by teaching you the energetic process step by step, one step at a time, and however long you need those steps to master them in order to alchemize your pain and trauma. That's what we teach first. When you get through that process, the next steps up are to become the 20 universal ways of oneness. Because
Yeah,
the only
can I
thing
pause you real
blocking,
quick, Rachel?
yeah, of course,
So,
of course.
I just want to make sure that the audience understands this, because there's many steps to this. So step one is obviously having the want to, and then starting to become self-aware. That's step one. Yes.
Yep. Yes.
After we're self-aware, then it's understanding, and this is custom to me personally, or whoever is going to go down this journey. You guys are going to help us identify how to get here
Yeah.
and out of here. That's
Yeah.
like step 2, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And then so after we do that, and we start to identify some of the traumas and programs we're running, step 3 is leveling up to this next phase. Is that what you're about to
I would say
get to?
step 3 is actually alchemizing the energies that are there. All
Okay.
of the programming, all of the wounds, alchemize them. They don't need to be there. There's no more
Okay.
coping strategies, no more living with this, no more taking drugs for it, no more, doing
Okay.
the tools outside of you for it. It's, I am the power that I need to heal myself 100%. I just need to learn how to do that. That's what we
Okay.
teach.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So that's step 3. Now, step 4 is what you were about to get into before I interrupt you. So you keep going.
Yes.
Okay.
Then we elevate higher. How do I, to truly be an enlightened being on this planet, that step-by-step guide to get there is to learn about and become each and every of the 20 universal ways of oneness. We learned enlightened definitions, and we become the first way of oneness is the way of responsibility, for example. A lot of people will hear that and they'll be like, I'm responsible. I'm responsible. No, this is an enlightened definition. An enlightened definition of responsibility. I can give an example that I mentioned earlier. Someone else may be doing something very unloving, very harmful to you. My responsibility is connecting to my divinity, identifying if that's causing wounding, pain, or programs or anything inside of me. The way of responsibility says I heal that first and foremost. That is my number one step. That's my responsibility. I heal me. Doesn't matter what you're doing. I heal me. Number 2, because of the way you're showing up, I don't use that as an excuse to show up in that same low dysfunctional vibrational frequency. I
Okay.
elevate higher. What way of oneness is missing in this person? Maybe they're causing harm and they're being violent. Well, they're missing the way of harmlessness and gentleness. I become energetically that way 100 times. And then what alchemizes and heals the scenario is that vibrational frequency. So it's a becoming of the different vibrational frequencies that raise us up to the level of enlightenment.
Okay. I'm following you. And I just want to pivot slightly. We're going to come back to this, but I want to pivot slightly. I can go get a life coach and they can help me navigate some of this, right? I can get private coaching they can customize things to me. How is traditional life coaching and therapy different from what you teach and what your mystical life coaches do? Like, what's the difference?
Yeah, beautiful question. I'll let Danny piggyback off of this in 1 minute because he's been through it. He's become a certified coach, of course. So the first thing is anything to try to change behavior, you're focusing on the surface level. That's temporary. You will not have permanent change.
Okay.
This includes even, what a lot of programs do for, for addictions and different things. They try to get the behavior to change and then you always have to struggle with the behavior. I have to try to stay on track. We don't need to put that much effort into things. We alchemize on an energetic level the core of what is creating the behavior to begin with. So
Okay.
one of the differences with becoming a coach is you learn to do this work 100% for yourself. If you are not healed or healing in these ways, and 100% what your programs are, and that's what you're healing, you shouldn't be a coach. So we have a lot of people that lack the way of integrity out there when they don't apply things to themselves and do it for themselves, but then they're out coaching things. So those types of people lack integrity. We shouldn't be going to them for help. How can they help you? They haven't healed themselves, or they're not in the process of doing what they're teaching you, using it on themselves. Talk therapy is an example where that actually can trap your traumas in there permanently. Talking about your problem doesn't heal your problem. So a lot of these methods that people use, and I think a lot of them with very good intentions, by the way, I don't think they mean to cause harm, most people, but
most
you are temporarily moving energy. That's all you're doing when you're using a lot of these modalities. You temporarily move energy. You don't alchemize energy. Energy never dies. You have to transform the energy into a higher vibrational frequency. And for anybody who thinks, yeah, but I do that with, sound healing and meditation, You're not. And that's the problem. We lack the level of education to really understand how these things work. We're just told through great marketing techniques that this works, that works, join my program. No, you get the education to understand what you're doing, how and why it works. I'll say one more thing, because this is really critical. You mentioned earlier, a ton of people out there do inner child healing or inner child work, I call it, because it's not healing. The majority of what is happening is you're identifying your child. You're identifying how old. I'm 6 years old. I'm showing up in this wound. Beautiful. That's a great first start. That will never heal your inner child. Think about this. You're not a child anymore. If your inner child is getting activated, that shows you're unhealed. You're not a child. You're an adult. You shouldn't be showing up in your relationship as a 4-year-old, for crying out loud. And that's not shaming. That's awakening. Oh my God, look at this. I'm projecting onto my partner. I'm totally 4 years old right now, and I'm turning my partner into my mommy, for example. Beautiful. That's part of the work, but you're not done there. If that's all you know, oh, love your inner child. Oh, embrace your inner child. Oh, parent your inner child. That's most people in their techniques. You are trapping the child as a child in codependency to depend on you for everything. That is not what we teach at Masters of Self University. Alchemize, empower the inner child to stop needing a dysfunctional, unhealthy parent to validate them and approve of them, and instead alchemize the energy, connect to your power, become powerful, and validate yourself. Those are the biggest differences in our program. Permanent, actual healing versus temporary fixes.
Yeah, well, that's what people should be looking for.
Yes.
You know, like that makes sense, but people don't know what they don't know, right?
They don't know what they don't know.
And it's, you know, so for Danny, what would you say to someone that just wants to be a better person? Let's just start there. You know, what should be, you know, obviously go to MSU, right? But just from you going down this journey before, how did you stumble upon this? Like, what was your like inner compass saying, like, to go gather information, figure out what's, if I don't know what I don't know, how do I know this company or this coach is better? You know, that's the hard part. So could you give advice to people listening that might want to step into this journey?
Yeah, well, I'd also love to just keep going with what Rachel was saying, because this was my experience, right? Let's go back to before I met Rachel. Talk therapy. I was doing talk therapy, and Rachel beautifully outlined this 3-step process of finding the power within, which is self-awareness, connecting to your power, and then learning the alchemy part. But what happens is, and this is what happened to me, I was aware of some of the stuff. I wasn't aware of all of it. I was aware of some of the stuff that I was doing. I could see, I know this therapist was helping me see and feel my inner child. I know that my inner child's showing up right now, but I'm stuck at that first level. The awareness piece is beautiful. We have to start there. But it means nothing if we don't know how to connect to our power and alchemize it. So what happens a lot is people stay trapped at this first level of just trying to become more aware. And all they can do is just become more aware, but they can't because they're limited by the programs and the wounding that's in there. So what this work does is it allows you to transform that layer of energy that's showing up, or that pain, or whatever it is, to then allow you to start maturing, start elevating your consciousness. And when that happens, you become more aware. Now, the reason I bring this up is because self-awareness is not a destination. You do not just arrive at self-awareness. It's not like an on and off switch. There is levels. There is layers to this. We grow and grow and grow. And so as we move through these 3 steps, which Rachel outlined, self-awareness, it isn't self-awareness, check, I'm there. It's, okay, become aware, drop into my heart, connect to the power that I am, alchemize, and then repeat that process. And instead of it becoming a downward spiral of me falling into depression, falling into anxiety, right? We use these words. We're now going in an upward spiral. And the more we go upwards, we're elevating through this work. It's not just about healing. It's about elevating and awakening. And the more we do that, that's what helps us alleviate the suffering that we go through. You know, Rachel always says, you know, challenges, adversity, it's going to come to your life, but how we handle that's where the growth is. And when we learn how to feel into our heart, to alchemize the energy, and that's where the transformation occurs, because not everything in life is going to be perfect. And that's the real difference between what we teach and what Rachel's taught me and what all of the mystical life coaches learn is how to, yes, become aware, but also how to continuously elevate and become more aware. Now, I'm not at a place where I'm all of the ways of oneness and I'm fully enlightened. I hope that in this lifetime I get there. And I'm very confident. I'm sure that I keep following Rachel. I keep doing this work. I will get there. I am 2 years into this work though. And that has really connected me to my power. And that means that I can authentically guide others through the same journey. And this goes back to, what Rachel was talking about earlier. There's many people out there who are teaching from an inauthentic place, meaning they haven't truly become what it is that they're spewing. Now, I went through this. I read all of the books and I was wanting to become a life coach. But I hadn't properly healed yet. I was just wanting to regurgitate the things that I'd learned, the things that were in my head, the things I've heard other people say. And through mystical life coaching, it's all about actually becoming the transformation yourself. So you are that love, you are that energy that you then can help guide others through. And that means you don't have to be at the finish line. You just have to be further along than the person it is that you're helping. And that's the beauty of this work, is it allows you to have that authentic experience and then guide people from that. And you don't need to be all the way at the end, but you should look for anybody, any teacher that or coach that is further along on the path to where it is that you want to go. You would never want to find a guide who hasn't already done what it is that you're trying to do. And so as mystical life coaches, yes, we're not at the finish line. We're not all the way there, but we do study this work day in, day out, not from our mind, but from in our heart. And that's where it counts.
Well, first off, thank you for expanding upon that. That was beautifully said and really helps me understand. There's one thing I wanted to ask this question before we jumped on. The term mystical teacher, mystical life coach, what does the word mystical mean to you guys?
Well, when we say, what does it mean to you? I'm going to change that, because I don't care what anything means to anybody. We're not here to make stuff up. It's what is it in the way of truth?
Yeah, what is it?
Right? What is it in the way of truth? And so everybody has the potential, and deep inside of their core, the truth of them, they are mystical beings. Everyone is. Whether they live as connected to it or not depends on the person. But to be mystical is you have energetic, magical, mystical, spiritual experiences. The more connected to your divinity you become, the more healed and the more elevated you become, then you understand that we are nothing but mystical beings, right? So the magic, the divinity that we are tends to come online more energetically, psychically, emotionally. Like your extrasensory perceptions, your intuition starts kicking in organically and enhances and elevates, no matter where that is within you now, no matter what level you're at now. It magnifies it, tenfold, 100-fold over time, simply by doing this work. It's an organic byproduct. So our extrasensory perceptions, all of those abilities come online more and more naturally the more you heal and elevate in this work. And those mystical experiences then start to occur very naturally in your life. And these magical, I could give a lot of examples, but I won't, because it'll sound like I'm making them up with all my clients. It's just let it happen organically when you become the mystical person that you truly innately are.
Yeah. When you said that, the first thing I thought about was the journey that I went on. And I will say this, and I even tell like my wife sometimes. Now that I've done this work, there's definitely situations I find myself where those sensory, the sensory things that I'm feeling, are coming up more often.
Yes.
Right? Or what we consider like, deja vu, or what I consider, oh, that's so weird that this happened, right? Like,
yes.
And that's how like we would normally explain it if we didn't do this work. I'm trying to explain it for the viewership of like, hey, this is what it could feel like. But you're right. Once you start doing this work and you become, I guess, more divine,
Yes.
it really opens up. And for me, that's really cool. I use the word cool very loosely, but it's really
It
cool to
is
me.
cool.
It
It
is.
is,
It's fun.
and I think um, what it does bring me is like a curiosity
Yeah.
of I want to like keep going. I
Yeah.
want to keep going down and doing the work because I'm seeing it. For us as human beings, I'm a coach as well. I'm not in this type of coaching, but I'm in business coaching.
Hmm.
But as a coach and a mentor, people always are looking for that validation. And I know that's a program, and
Hmm.
we'll jump over that in a second. But they're always looking for like, is this going to work? Is this for me? Am I going to have success or whatever?
Hmm.
Right? They're looking for that like check mark. Now with this work, I believe is solely dependent on me. Solely dependent on me. Like there's nothing you can do to me. You can obviously provide the frameworks and whatnot and teach me how to do this, but it's dependent on me and me doing the work. And I love that. Like that, if I'm one of those people that like it's, I don't like living in this black and white world. Like
The
it's,
world of separation consciousness.
yeah,
That's the
I
world
don't,
of separation consciousness.
yes. Thank you for pointing that out. I'm doing a good job here. Right. So I don't like working. I don't like being in that world. But as a coach, when people go into coaching, they're looking for that quick fix or, that moment of validation where like, oh, this works, or, this investment was worth it. For this work, it's a entire holistic.
It's extremely holistic, but here's the beauty about connecting directly to divinity. There's no such thing as this work not working. No such thing. That doesn't even exist. There's such thing that you might not do the work. I can't force you. Our mystical life coaches cannot force our clients to do the work. We can't force you to do the work. We can support you. We can offer you unconditional love. We can offer you the way of wisdom. We can offer you everything you need to be 100% successful. And that is what we do. And the mystical life coaches in my corporation are incredible at being able to do that with people and for people. However, we can't force you to actually do the real work. But if you do the real work, this
Yeah.
is the best part of it. There is no such thing as this work not working. No such thing.
And
You do the work, you'll see the results. You get the results, period, end. And that's the magical, mystical part of it.
Yeah. And just to like put it on a much smaller scale, I know you're talking about like someone going through the soul process, but even when I was working with Danny, like there was a week that I missed and I didn't do anything for a week. Like nothing. I didn't drop in. I didn't go. I didn't spend time with myself. I didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's weeks that I was like, almost every other week, I was super committed and I did the work. And just the difference in those weeks of how I felt was night and day. And I even told my wife and my mom and family members like about this, that this is because this is a journey I've been at for a year and a half, right? And it wasn't until I found you guys that I really started to see the transformation take place. And I feel that transformation has allowed and opened up so much in my life. I want to talk. We talked a lot about being a student in MSU, but I want to talk about being a coach, right? Because there's many people that are they always want something to strive to, right? And for me, it definitely piques my interest as well. If someone is committed to this work and does the work and as a student, how can someone become a mystical life coach with you guys? What does that process look like?
Yeah, so it starts with, applying to our program. It is a 6-month coaching program, certification program, where the first half of that program, people go through as a client. They're learning how to achieve this work for themselves. It is critical that they can achieve this for themselves. So we take them step by step by step with the support of digital course and workbook and support materials, but weekly live classes where we're teaching you step by step how actually to achieve this. And simultaneously, but I'm going to lay it out in a simple way. The second half of the program, for the most part, simultaneously, you're still learning how to coach this and learning coaching skills. Yeah. But you then are able to guide other people and you learn how now to guide someone else through that very deep transformational process. that very deep process of how to actually alchemize the programs, alchemize the pain, alchemize the wounds or the unhealed traumas or whatever it is. You guide them step by step. So that's a different skill set. So throughout the 6-month program, you learn how to do it for yourself. Then you learn how to guide someone else through it. And you also continuously, for 3/4 of the program, you're learning step by step how to practice guiding the other student coaches that are in your class. So it's a constant, being supported, guiding somebody through their coaching. For example, it's not just studying a book, gain a little knowledge, and then go regurgitate that with future clients. Like that, we don't do any of that at Masters of Self University.
Yeah,
and I'll let
that sounds amazing. And for me, if I'm someone, and I am, but I have other things going on. But if I was someone that is going through this work, Danny, you spoke about it beautifully. Like, it's a continuous thing. It doesn't stop. You don't be like, oh, I'm done. Here we go. Like, I'm gonna go be a doctor now, or I'm gonna go do whatever. It's a process every day. To be a coach, to do that for a living, it's just you living, and then you helping others get to the same point you are. That's what a coach does. That's the responsibility of a coach in general. We're just doing it in a way that brings enlightened beings to the surface. I love that. I love that. I'm gonna do our viewers a favor. I'm gonna drop a link. If you guys are interested in becoming a Mr. Life Coach or interested in any of MSU programs, Rachel, I'm gonna do you a big one. And please book a call with Rachel's team. If you have questions, they'll answer them. Right? What does that process look like for you guys? If someone is interested in either being coached by one of your coaches or wants to be a coach, what should they do? After I drop the link.
Danny?
Set up a free consultation. If you're interested in being a coach in this work, jump on a consultation with me. We'll talk about what that might look like. There's an application that you'll find on our website. We'll put all the links below. And if you're interested in working with us and finding your power within, or you're interested in learning the ways of oneness from Rachel, all of it can be found on our website. And the best thing to do is just jump on a call with me, and we can talk exactly about where you're at and how we can help you. That's the most important thing, is for us to be able to help you in you becoming the best, most loving, healed version of yourself. Because the more we do that, the more we spread that light and that love throughout all of humanity. And not from a place of, oh, love and light, right? From a place of actual being that. Of being okay with the shame, of the darkness, being okay with all of it, because that's what we came here to be. That's the freedom. That's where we find it.
Now, as we wrap up, we got a few more minutes. Rachel, I just want, at the end of every episode, I like to ask 2 questions. The first one I want to ask you is, what's next for you? Like, what are you working on the next 6 to 12 months that you would like to share with the audience? It can be personal. It can be, in MSU. It can be anything.
That's a good question. So I allow the universe to guide me and what I'm supposed to do next. That's how I live my life. That's how the more enlightened you become, the more divine you become. It's here's where we need you now. And so one of the ways of oneness is the way of selfless service. I am always in selfless service. That's what I came here to do. I am a mystical teacher, a spiritual teacher of oneness consciousness. So I think the next step is we are going to start having more live in-person events, especially in San Diego, California. So we're going to start holding our in-person events so that we can activate the universal ways of oneness. We can activate these frequencies. We can ignite transformation in people and support them through their journeys, but we can do it in person. I think as beautiful of a blessing as all of this technology is, and thank goodness that we have it all, it's time to get back to doing this type of healing in person. So our biggest next step is pay attention and follow us to see when we're going to launch our next live events and retreats, because we have in-person intensive retreats that we will have as well. Those are the next biggest steps for us.
I love that. And Danny, for you, right? You're 2 years into this. What's coming next for you?
I'm just excited to continue to coach this work because I love it. I love doing this. I get to do. to be able to heal myself every day to become more free, that's my responsibility as a coach, because the more healed, the more elevated I become, the more I can offer that to my clients. So I'm excited to be doing that for the next foreseeable future. And also Rachel's book, These Are the Ways of Oneness. I'm still working on the first way of oneness, the way of responsibility. Now, this is a linear path, but it's also not. So I'm integrating all of the ways and different aspects. But at the moment, I'm really focusing on just becoming responsible in every aspect of my life, not just my healing, which I'm always doing that, but with my finances, with keeping my house clean, and all of these other ways, I'm really focusing on that. And let me tell you, in just doing that, the energy that I found in just becoming the first way of oneness, it's insane. And I'm super excited to continue to elevate and become all the way up to the way of harmony, the 20th way.
It's so funny. In the book, I believe, Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's even a part of the book where you say you need to read this book multiple times.
Yes.
And so I went through the first time and I was like, whoa. This is a lot. It's a lot to comprehend. And the second time I opened it, I got to like the first 3 and I'm like, all right, like I've heard this before. And like now I'm starting to catch it. And my goal is to read it 5 times. That's what I feel like. I feel like me, I'm not great at reading anyway. Like I get really bored and I just can't focus and feel in the same time. So I definitely, that little side note in your book of read this multiple times.
Yes.
Definitely helped. All right, guys. Last thing that I want to ask you. I always ask my guests, is there anything that's on your heart that you feel that you want to share with the audience or with anyone specifically that would be valuable and they could take away from this episode?
Yeah, I would love to share that when we talk about the book that I have written and the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness, this is not some marketing bullshit. This isn't some, hey, buy this stuff from us, because this has the potential to completely transform your life in ways that you cannot begin to fathom. And I say that from not just the bottom of my heart. I say that from my soul. If every human being learns the 20 ways of oneness and they start to become them, we could transform all of the darkness and the evil on this planet in a matter of 2 decades or less. We really could. We are that powerful if we just learn what it means to become the ways and stop with the surface level stuff that we've been trapped in. So my heart and my soul, I believe this is the path. I don't believe it. I know that this is the path to freedom in every aspect of a person's life. So I invite everyone to learn about the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness and at least just start your journey. Start by reading, maybe that's where you start. Just start somewhere, learning what these 20 ways are. Get curious enough to bring them and invite them into your life, because you cannot imagine what's on the other side if you're actually willing to learn them and become what they are.
I can second that. I've read it and it's got the goods for sure. Rachel, thank you for sharing. Danny, anything for you that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I can really say before this work, I was struggling. I was suffering. I was still very depressed. I was seeking for answers. And if any part of this podcast, it struck a chord of truth, it's you felt something inside of you that is guiding you to be curious and learn more, follow that. Because that's what I did when I heard Rachel first speak a few years ago. And it has completely transformed my life. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Rachel, so much for bringing this work to the world. Like, thank you. And for anyone out there, like, if there is a part of you that is feeling like, oh, I want to be a coach, become the way of integrity. That's one of the ways of oneness. And that means to heal yourself first. And that's what we teach you through the Mystical Life Coach certification. And if you're just listening to this and you're like, man, I am a little depressed, the world is pretty messed up right now. There's a lot going off. There's a lot coming to the surface. And if you need help, come to us, jump on a call, because it changed my life and I know it can change yours. So thank you for having us on today, Chris.
Yeah. Thanks, Danny, for sharing. And I'll just say this, from being someone that is in a coaching position, someone that's done a lot of personal development work and wanted to just live a better life. That's where it starts. Having the self-awareness and the wanting to try to find the best version of yourself. The reason why I asked Rachel and Danny to join us is I believe MSU has it going on, and they have the answers to really help people elevate. And as human beings, that's what we should be doing. We should be trying to elevate and become the best version of ourselves. And so if you're out there, and like Danny said, if there's any part of this episode that struck something in you, just start with curiosity. Start by having a conversation. Start by going to a website. Start by watching a YouTube video to really see what comes up, and then have the courage to take the first step and have that conversation or move forward. And MSU or not, I think any person that's trying to level up and grow as a human being is a good thing. Is a good thing. So I challenge the listeners that are watching to always keep pressing the gas pedal and trying to level up. So Danny, Rachel, thank you from the bottom of my heart. This was an amazing episode that will have a ton of viewers, I'm sure. And I just appreciate you guys giving me some of your time today. I learned a ton, and I'm sure many others will. So thanks, everyone. As always, click the subscribe button. Follow our future episodes of the Impact Meets Innovation podcast. Thanks, guys.